Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Underwater Photography Show. As always, I am Matthew Sullivan.
And I'm Alex Mustard.
And Alex, you have something a little special to show us
Oh,
today.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. Where is it? Where
get
is it?
going with that.
Yes,
Okay.
my new book on underwater photography. It doesn't come through that well with the green screen and everything, which is called 52 Assignments Underwater Photography, has been printed. It's not, as we record this, it's not yet on sale. The plan with it is actually all the books for the English speaking market have been printed, and it will go on sale in the different markets when we can get the stock to those markets. The plan at the moment is to release in the fall here in the UK, and then in the spring in the States. I think the official publication dates are kind of something like the 12th of October in Europe and something like the 12th of April in the States. However, the publishers told me that basically as soon as they can get the stock to those places, all the duties and everything paid, and that sort of thing, they'll get shipped to distributors and they'll go on sale. But those are the kind of absolute kind of, it'll definitely be on sale by then, hopefully sooner. And I'm really excited about it. It's, I think, a very different type of underwater photography book. And I hope that means that anyone who's interested in buying an underwater photography book, whatever books they have already, they'll think about buying this one because it's just something really different. I also kind of wrote it very much in mind of the way people learn stuff today. I mean, I do think, 20 years ago, kind of everyone learned anything from books. And these days, of course, people come on and watch, come onto YouTube, watch YouTube videos if they want to find out how things are. They search online for very specific technical articles to learn things and everything like that. And I think you've got to be aware of that writing a book on underwater photography, is that if people want to find something out, they're not necessarily going to go to a book. So this is a book that's designed that you interact with this book and it keeps all the things that you need in one place. So it's based around 52 assignments. The number 52 it could be weeks in a year, but I'm well aware that most underwater photographers don't dive every week of the year. So I've picked 52 different assignments for people to do in their underwater photography. The aim of the assignments is to have some fun with your photography. The other aim of the assignments is to get some exciting new images. And I think all the assignments should yield some really interesting and different images for you. And then finally, I crafted that list of 52. And actually, that took me as long as actually writing the book, was playing around with what assignments I wanted in, which I didn't want in, and what order to put them in. I crafted that list so that each of those assignments would teach you something quite specific about underwater photography along the way to getting a nice picture. And that lesson would expand your horizons as an underwater photographer. And that, when for example, one of the assignments in here, which is a very specific one and not very typical, but we'll talk about some of the more typical ones later, is going and shooting mandarin fish. And I think if you've never shot mandarin fish, they teach you a really interesting lessons about working with a challenging subject, how that subject, puts a real pressure on you, how you're going to focus on the camera, on the subject. It makes you think through getting the most out of the autofocus performance of your camera, because you can't just simply flood it all with light and have amazing autofocus. Otherwise, the behavior stops. And I think, that's the sort of thing that I want people to get out of. It's like, oh, yeah, of course, if I can't focus, I'll turn on loads of lights. Well, what happens if you have a subject you can't do that for? How are you going to deal with that?
So before we get into like some of the specific assignments, I think a question that a lot of people are going to have is what differentiates this book from Underwater Photography Masterclass, which I'm sure everybody watching probably owns, myself included.
Yeah, I think it's an essential part of having to watch this. Yeah. So,
Yeah, exactly.
so they are really different. And I mean, it's not part of the advertising spiel for this book, but actually this book came about because I felt that Underwater Photography Masterclass, I wrote it 9 years ago. It was published 8 years ago. And I felt that I really wanted to bring something else now to the market. It'd been a good, nice break. Underwater Photography Masterclass is still, really popular. I think I wrote it to try to make it as timeless as possible. It's not based around fads and fashions too much. It's not based around equipment too much. It's very much driven by light and technique, which remain the same as the gear changes. And so that book is as relevant now as ever. And the publishers have talked about saying, would you like to update it? And I said, well, if you actually read the book, I mean, I could update it and I could change all the pictures and everyone would go out and buy another copy. But the reality is the advice in it would stay the same. I'd just maybe rewrite a few sentences and put some few pictures in, and everyone would have to pay again to get the same thing. And so I was really against doing that. And I'd always, when I planned Underwater Photography Masterclass, I'd always planned the book I would do as the follow-up. And so at the beginning of last year, I wrote to my publishers who did that book and said, I want to do the follow-up book to Underwater Photography Masterclass now, please. And this is the idea for that book. And they said, oh, we'd love that. Yeah, that's going to be amazing. However, we'd really like you to do this book first. So they persuaded me to write this. It's actually part of a series of books, all of which are assignment-based. So where I would say this differs from Underwater Photography Masterclass is really across the board. Underwater Photography Masterclass tries to be holistic about teaching you all the important techniques to allow you to take any underwater photo you like. It's a book of methods, a book of techniques, a book of how to control your camera underwater and how to control light underwater to make the most of photographic opportunities. This book is not trying to be holistic. It's 52 things that I think will be lots of fun and yield amazing underwater photos. And they're really diverse. It's everything, from just to give you an example, using a snoot with panning, to off-camera strobes, to shooting fluorescence, wide angle, lots of things that will stretch you in different directions, and lots more. There's 52 is actually quite a big number when you start to think about it.
Yeah.
But I would say that the difference with Masterclass, to get back to your question, is that Masterclass is a teaching book. It lays out methods and directions and instructions for people to follow. This is very much a coaching book. It's aimed at someone saying, I'm not going to teach you all the nuts and bolts of underwater photography. I'm kind of expecting you to be into underwater photography. You don't need to be experienced, but you need to be enthusiastic about it. And I want you to work with me to try things that will develop your skills yourself, and you'll learn by doing things rather than learn by reading things or following instructions. So I see it very much as the difference between teaching and coaching. This book, 52 Assignments, is all about coaching, and Masterclass is about teaching. But I think that they're both, very enjoyable books. I would say Masterclass is also a bit longer. It's a bigger book. This book is surprisingly low priced. The prices on the back, which is, not what it will sell for, because, they always get discounted wherever you sell them. The price on the back are $12.99 in pounds in the UK and $19.99 in dollars. And I'm sure it'll instantly be a lot cheaper than that on our favorite online retailers or wherever else you want to buy books from. For me, it's a total no-brainer. I don't know how much Naughty Cam will sell you a tube of O-ring grease for, but I suspect it's more than the 150 pages of this book. So, yeah, it should be a no-brainer for anyone out there who wants to do underwater photography.
Did you have any particular favorites of the assignments that you created in there?
I'm not sure about that. I think there's some, they're very diverse. Some are, simply like one of the fun one I really liked early on is shooting split levels, but you're not allowed to use a face mask. So it's to make people realize that, a lot of underwater photography doesn't have to involve diving. It doesn't have to involve snorkeling. There are times where you can use your underwater camera to do different things. And that's a challenge that says, go out, find a river, swimming pool, wherever, walk in off a beach, but you're not allowed to take a face mask, but you've got to create interesting split levels. And then things that were a challenge to me, because, there were things in here I hadn't done before. I'd done some photogrammetry before, but there's a specific photogrammetry example. I think that's something that a lot of underwater photographers have never tried. And it's not about, go down there and find a shipwreck and map a whole shipwreck. I went and shot a statue, one of the statues in Cayman. And I did 120 pictures of the statue. And that was enough to build the photogrammetry model. I'm never going to find it now. Oh, yeah, I found it. So there's the photogrammetry model. Unfortunately, in the book, my lovely 3D model that I can spin around on the computer, you have to choose a particular angle to show it from. And I have to say, one angle of a photogrammetry picture, I could have just kind of taken a picture and blacked out the background, but I did do it properly. So yeah, there's lots of fun things in there that stretch you in different directions with the instructions on how to do it. But I didn't write the book as kind of do it, this is exactly how to do it.
Yeah.
It's very much written that the learning is in the process of you figuring things out. There are on each page there's boxes with tips and and there's tips and pro tips in the book, which are kind of little things that will help you make things work things out. And it does give you detailed instructions, but it's more about the learning comes from you trying these things, and it's about pushing people away from what they do all the time. And obviously, some of the assignments in there, some photographers will already do, and they'll be their bread and butter. Yeah. But I've tried to be really diverse, because I think one thing I'd always say about my underwater photography is I've never been like a shark specialist or a nudie specialist. I've always tried to do a bit of all the types of photography, and I've brought that into this book.
So I think it's a good complement to Masterclass, because you can learn everything in Masterclass and then apply it to everything in this book, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and I wrote it last summer, and I didn't really read it. The deadline for submitting it was actually September last year. It shows how slow these things are. Nearly a year ago, I sent it off to the publisher. And then back in about April time, they sent it back to me. And I read it on the flight to somewhere I was going around that time of the year. And I not read it for that time. And I really enjoyed it. I don't have as much space for words as Masterclass as well, just with the layout of the pages. There's only room for a certain number of words on the page. Obviously, with some of the assignments, they're not just a double page spread. They bleed over onto a second page. The pictures don't look the best coming through the camera, but the print's really nice, given that it's a relatively inexpensive book. All the pictures look really nice in the pages. And I really enjoyed it, and actually found so I think it's going to be very well received. There's not been another underwater photography book like it, so I think people will value that, whatever books they've got in their collection. And I think that whatever type of photography and I think one thing I like about this book is I could give this to some of the very, very best, most accomplished underwater photographers that I know, and there's a ton of assignments in there that they would have never actually tried, which is really cool. Like, it's not just, and obviously if you're relatively new, there's 52 assignments that you've never even tried, and it starts with slightly more basic ones. There's a couple of assignments that are more computer based, and then there's some assignments that are a little bit more about outreach in terms of getting stuff out into contests or into magazines and things like that. So it's kind of quite holistic in that it's although it doesn't try and cover every technique in underwater photography, it has, in some ways, it's broader than Masterclass, because it's everything from computer to competitions to interacting with magazines to trying software, and then everything from from different types of photography all around the world.
Well, I'm personally looking forward to having it on my shelf and going through it, and probably I'm sure there's a ton of the stuff in there that I haven't tried either, so I'll take it upon myself to try and work through all 52 at some point.
And I guess that's something I've not really thought of, is that it would be quite cool to have somewhere online where people could share images, and that would be really nice to sort of have a community of people like, oh yeah, I tried this one, this didn't work. And like, you sometimes get that with recipe books from chefs and things, that there'll be a website where people are like, oh yeah, I've tried that recipe, and actually I found it was really good if you substitute avocado for mango, and it was amazing, or whatever it is. And I think it'd be quite cool if there was a way to, maybe in the future, we'll when it's older, maybe try and put some of the content online and allow people to have that kind of forum interaction with comments.
I think that's a great idea. And if there's nothing else at the moment that you'd like to add to that?
No, other than it will initially go on sale in the UK. It's a UK publisher. They also have an American branch, and it will go out to the American audience pretty quickly. From, for example, Amazon in the UK, you will be able to order the book, and they will ship it all around the world. But the reality is, it's a very cheap book, and you'll pay more for shipping than you will for the book. So it's probably a good one to see what British friends you've got, get them to buy a copy, and then give it to you when you next see you. But yeah, it's I'm really excited now to see how people receive it, just simply because there's not been another underwater photography book like it, and I think I really enjoyed the excitement that was in the underwater photography community when Underwater Photography Masterclass came out. Everyone was enjoying that book, enjoying reading it. This book is very different, but I think hopefully it will create a similar buzz of excitement, and certainly given the price that it is. I mean, anyone who's doing underwater photography, it's a total no-brainer purchase. So hopefully there'll be lots of them around for people to enjoy.
I would imagine there will be. And like I said, I'll have one on my shelf here at some point, so I look forward to that. But seems like a good place to wrap it up. And we'll see you guys in the next one.
Thanks.